We're going to talk about globalization and society. So we will talk mainly about the differences between different stakeholders in multinational enterprise activities. We'll talk also about some of the major economic effects of these multinational enterprises, both at home as well as in host countries. We'll talk a little bit about ethical behavior and some cultural foundations of this ethical behavior. We'll talk also about corruption, bribery, and how those do affect, let's say, cultural, legal, and political forces. These are extremely important, especially if you would like to invest or go to some other countries, because definitely in certain countries, it would be expected, not expected, but let's say you might end up, let's say, in providing bribery if you would like, let's say, to do particular things. I haven't had an experience, but a friend of mine, for example, have told me the moment he wanted to invest in North Macedonia, for example, he was asked in advance a sum of money that he had to pay to that particular official only to provide him with a license, and then things become much easier. I think these things are available in other countries, especially those. Let's say that their corruption index is much higher, but you cannot simply do that in countries that have extremely low corruption index. So we'll talk also the role of the government and companies in resolving environmental issues, and see how global, let's say, how global labor issues need to be addressed by these multinational enterprises. So when we talk about stakeholders, can any of you tell me what are the stakeholders? So when we talk about stakeholder, what do you understand by a stakeholder?
Other players of all major processes. It doesn't mean stakeholders in the enterprise ownership, but it can be stakeholders in the state or stakeholders in the process. That are players that are particularly interested in the result of the process.
Absolutely. And who can be like stakeholders of a particular company?
For example, stakeholders of the political process will be
I cannot hear now properly, Oleg.
Stakeholders of the political process. For example, maybe citizens of the state who vote, for example, for the president, for prime minister, stakeholders of the economical process, maybe the companies who are interested in the getting additional value of the process, for example, selling its own goods or services. Stakeholders are the consumers of the product as well, because they're interested in improving the quality they consume. Stakeholders of the negotiation process, that both sides who negotiate in order to have win-win situation.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and companies usually must satisfy the demands of these stakeholders. And in one company, let's say business company, who are the ones that usually have demands from the companies? That can be shareholders. Shareholders would like additional sales because at the end they increase their profit. That's why they are interested in how the company performs. Employees are also stakeholders because employees want, I don't know, safer workplace, higher compensation, higher salary. Stakeholders are also the customers of that particular company. They want higher quality products. They want their needs that they have to be satisfied. Suppliers are also a part of the stakeholders. Society can also at large be a stakeholder as well, because they would like to see more jobs. They would like to see increased corporate taxes, which will improve their living, more corporate support for social services or social responsibility programs. So this is why actually businesses are important for the stakeholders, and these companies, these businesses must satisfy the demands of these stakeholders, and that's why they need to be concerned about the needs of these stakeholders. Because, as I said, shareholders, they would like additional sales, employees, better salary, safer environment, customers, better products. Society would like more jobs, and usually when companies do go and invest in another country, governments do provide this, let's say, these benefits, these opportunities, mainly as a trade-off to the benefits that the society will get in terms of them paying taxes, in terms of them providing more job opportunities in these cases, and with regards to them actually engaging in corporate social responsibility issues. And this is something that, let's say, multinationals can offer to local businesses in each and single country. So they can offer investment either through local companies, they can offer increased productivity, improved efficiency, as well as capital formation, human resources in terms of training, employment, managerial skills. Also, in terms of technology, is through these multinational enterprises investment that there is an improvement in terms of technology, mainly due to research and development, industrial upgrading, and new capital equipment. Increased trade also is one thing that the multinationals can offer, export in expansion and lower cost imports that they can offer. And in terms of environment, they do also provide access to clean technologies that maybe local companies are not able to provide, pollution abatement skills, as well as company-wide standards. So this shows that multinational enterprises do have important economic impact, and they have a lot to offer to the local countries where they would like to go, and where they would like to go and invest. One important aspect is the balance of payments effect, and this refers mainly to the trade and capital flows that result from the foreign direct investment in one particular country. And these effects may be either positive or negative, both for the host country or for the home country. When we talk about the host countries, they would like more inflows of FDI, foreign direct investment, because these foreign direct investment, they provide the foreign exchange needed to import goods and services and to pay off the foreign debt that they have. However, when we talk about FDI, both in capital inflows and capital outflows as well. So money flows in with the initial investment. However, at later stage, it flows out when earnings are repatriated to the parent economy, because the the profit usually goes to the parent economy that has invested in this particular country. However, FDI is an important measure in terms of the economic effect, because it looks at the amount invested in a country from companies in other countries. Usually, as a rule, what multinational enterprises investments are initially to, let's say, to the host country. However, they are unfavorable to the home country in the short run. However, after some time, the situation reverses usually, and they are much more beneficial to the home country than they are to the host country. And this happened because nearly all foreign investors, they eventually plan to have their subsidiaries to remit dividends back to the parent economy, what we discussed earlier, in excess of the amount that they have sent abroad to invest in that particular host country. That's why in the beginning, host country benefits more, but at later stages, more of this profit, of these dividends, returns back to the home country of these foreign investors. And now we move to the foundations of ethical behavior. So usually managers will be faced with situations when they will have to make the decisions about how they are going to act in a given situation. And as we know, there is always some gray area, which is not a clear-cut solution. How would you act in those particular situations? And this is a result of these three levels of the moral development. First one, we have the pre-conventional level. So this is when, for example, the children learn what is right and wrong, but they don't understand why is that right, why is that wrong. Simply they know this is right and wrong, but they don't know the reason why something is right and wrong in the beginning. Then we move from the preconditional to the pre-conventional to the conventional level. So this is where we learn the role conformity. We learn it from our peers, from our, let's say, parents, and then from societal laws. So something that we see in the society as right, we consider it as right. Let's say what our parents do, what our peers at school. So this is the conventional stage. So some people do also put into this group also the company codes of conduct to be, let's say, part of this conventional level, because within the company you have a code of conduct on how to behave. So that's what you consider to be right and wrong when you work for that particular company. And then we have the post-conventional level or the principled level, and this is where individuals do internalize moral behaviors. However, not because they are afraid of sanctions, but because they truly believe that such behavior is right and wrong. So when you as an individual would like to make an ethical decision, that's where you enter into the area of moral reasoning. So you start to examine moral values, especially those that are related to level 2 and 3, and then based on that you decide what you are going to do in these cases. So when we talk about the different approaches in terms of individuals and ethics, we have the three main approaches that we can use actually in these cases to confront any any ethical decisions that we might take. So the first one is actually the teleological approach. Then we have the utilitarianism. Then we have also the deontological approach. So when we talk about the teleological approach, usually decisions are based on the consequences of the action. So if the consequences are good, then we say that that's the right decisions. If there are bad consequences, we say it's a wrong decision. Opposite to that, we have utilitarianism. An action is right if it produces the greatest amount of good for the individual or the society. And then we have the deontological approach, where moral judgments are made and moral reasoning occurs independent of the consequences. So simply what is considered to be wrong is wrong, what is considered to be bad is bad. For example, bribery in these regards it's considered to be bad. So no matter if it brings positive or negative consequences in these cases, it's considered to be, let's say, bad in this case. So these are some of the main approaches that we can apply when we would like to make decisions. So why companies usually care about ethical behavior? These are two main reasons why companies do care about ethical behavior. And we know, and we have seen many cases, companies being under scrutiny for breaking, let's say, for being unethical in most of the cases. We know the case of Volkswagen when they cheated actually that particular software measuring, let's say, pollution. However, companies would like to abide to ethical behavior because that's how they develop their competitive advantage, and to avoid being perceived as irresponsible, because that will have huge effect on their brand reputation. So when we talk about ethical behavior, it is mainly founded in, let's say, two main ideologies, if we can call. One of them is relativism, and the other one is normativism. With regards to relativism, ethical truth depends on the values of a particular society. So ethical truth may be, let's say, may vary from one society or country to another society. That's why what is ethical in one country might seem to be unethical in particular countries. So in certain countries, bribery or providing it as a gift, in certain countries, it might be considered bribery. It's considered to be ethical. In some other countries, that's considered to be unethical. Whereas normativism holds that there are indeed universal standards of behavior. So although influenced by different cultures, this should be, let's say, accepted by people around the world. So for example, in pluralistic societies like the United States, we have commonly held values and norms. However, people may adopt in these societies other values or norms as their own values and norms in this case. However, there are also legal foundations when we talk about ethical behavior. And there are some pros and cons when we talk about these legal justifications, because there are some things that are unethical but are not illegal. It might be unethical but still can be illegal in these cases. For example, some form of interpersonal behavior can be wrong, but it's not illegal in this case. It's not against the law. Also, law is slow to develop in emerging areas. Law is often based on imprecisely defined moral concepts. So those are the people that are against. However, there are certain good reasons why people, let's say, use law to justify their ethical behavior, because the law does embody many of the country's moral principles. A law also provides a clearly defined set of rules. We saw earlier criminal law when we discussed it. Law also contains enforceable rules that apply to everyone, and law also represents consensus derived from widely shared experiences in that particular society in this case. One important aspect when we talk about a law, especially in terms of businesses, is the concept of corruption and bribery. Usually when we talk about bribery of public officials, that takes place to obtain maybe government contracts or to get officials to do what they should be doing actually anyway. So they are supposed to do that, but still you provide bribery, maybe to ease the job, to make it faster, so to influence that. So bribes are payments or promises to pay cash or anything of value. Compared to bribery, actually, corruption, especially nowadays, is a widespread phenomenon. It's in a way it's different actually, because corruption, in a way, you do it to influence actually their decision making. So you provide them with an amount or anything of value, so that in the end they make a decision on your favor. And we know what are some of the consequences of corruption, especially for let's say we know what happens to the countries that are identified as being corrupt. Especially nowadays, many companies, as part of their strategies, do engage a lot in protecting the environment. So we have lots of sustainability, let's say, engagement from the side of the company. Sustainability usually means meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. In particular, issues like global warming and the Paris Agreement on climate change. We see many countries, companies promising towards fighting global warming, which actually results from the release of greenhouse gases that trap heat in the atmosphere rather than allowing it to escape in these cases. Also, companies maybe do face also ethical decisions when we talk about, or ethical dilemmas when we talk about labor conditions. And here we have some of the sources of worker-related pressures in the global supply chain. So we have consumers. They would like that the companies do have ethical behavior with respect to workers. I know there have been many issues of, let's say, NGOs asking individuals boycotting products from companies that use, for example, child labor. So consumers are more aware nowadays, so they don't buy from these companies. Corporate investors, they don't provide funding if the companies is engaged. NGOs are also involved, governments, trade unions, media, as well as individual investors. And however, what we see, especially nowadays, especially from the side of the companies, is that usually companies are more motivated for, let's say, corporate responsibility. Companies experience mainly 4 strong motivations why they will be socially responsible. Usually, if they behave unethically and irresponsibly, that will give them lots of legal headaches. They can be brought to court. They can face brand damage in these cases. Also, this behavior could result in consumer actions like boycotting. Unethical behavior can also affect the morale of those employees. No one would like to work for a company that is not being ethical as well. And also, you never know when bad publicity is going to cost your sales. So the moment you get this bad publicity, definitely that will affect your sales as well. That's why many companies do develop the code of conduct, which is a major component of most of their strategies for ethical and socially responsible behavior. So yeah, that was all also with regards to this. Any